Hello and welcome to Sin and Steel, the heavy metal podcast. I'm your host, Serotonin, and in this episode, we're looking at what's new in metal. We're talking heavy metal news, new releases, and whatever I've been up to across the previous month, as well as being joined for a chat by Antoine and the two Matthews of Canadian progressive death metal band From Dying Suns. So let's talk all things May. To kick things off, Joey Belladonna of Anthrax has launched a Ronnie James Dio tribute band, covering the likes of Dio, Black Sabbath and Rainbow, which he'll be doing live, at least initially just across Florida, but he's said that he's looking to take the tour elsewhere. And I just think that would be shitloads of fun. Jeff Dunn, also known as Mantis, former guitarist of Venom, suffered a heart attack last month, and while he is back home after the installation of 2 stents, he does have a lengthy recovery process ahead of him, and he's actually put together a GoFundMe to help him cover his medical expenses and some of the other costs he'll kind of have throughout that recovery period. It's currently sitting at a bit over £5,500 raised. Another GoFundMe that's been shared out this month is for Louis Fortunelli, a Lamb of God fan who's suffering from stage 4 bone cancer. He met with Lamb of God at the Sick New World show through the Living the Dream Foundation. They're an organisation who bring people with life-threatening illnesses to shows to meet their favourite musicians. Just 2 weeks before the show, Lewis actually had to have one of his legs amputated because of the cancer. And while he's in great amounts of pain, his cancer is terminal, and so he just wants to live in the moment, and he didn't want it to stop him from going to the show. He told Randy that when nothing is working for the pain, he cranks up their music and it helps him ride it out. Obviously, this has meant that he's unable to work, and his wife has been unable to work either because she's become his full-time carer on top of looking after their kids and all the other stuff that comes with life. Randy asked her how she was paying the bills, and she said, they'll get paid eventually, or maybe I'll be paying them my whole life, I guess. So Randy shared out a link and some information on his page to a GoFundMe for Lewis and his family to help pay off some of their bills and medical costs, telling his fans that he's one of us and we have to look after our own, right? And the fundraiser is now sitting at over $23,000 US, which is wonderful. We have a bunch of heavy metal related film to talk about, including Terror Twins announcing the film Traction Park Massacre, which has been filming outside of Atlanta. It was written and directed by Adam Dubin, known for his work on Murder in the Front Row and A Year and a Half in the Life of Metallica. The film is an ode to classic 80s slashers and will feature a soundtrack packed with classic heavy metal, as well as an 80s inspired score from Alex Skolnick of Testament. Some of you may remember hearing about the film The Virginia Bitches, which I talked about with one of its stars, Corey Deanne Cowley, when she joined me for the Halloween episode last year as my very first guest. Well, it seems to have had a name change and is now listed as Devour, while the all-woman heavy metal band the film follows remain named The Virginia Bitches. This comes from the director of Bad Candy, and they have all been really hard at work getting everything moving. But if you do want to support the film, you can jump on over to their Indiegogo campaign, where there are loads of different perks, including merch, props from the film, and even posters signed with Corey's period blood. Because again, as you may remember, this is one of the ways that she makes her special effects look so fucking real. Because she uses real shit. A new Led Zeppelin documentary is on its way, and while the film titled Becoming Led Zeppelin was premiered in a rough cut at the Venice Film Festival back in 2021, it's since had more footage added and has finally been picked up for a theatrical release. There haven't been any dates announced yet, but hopefully we'll hear something soon. Sabaton have also announced a cinema release for their Tour to End All Tours show, which was recorded at the Ziggo Dome in Amsterdam, and it's due to hit cinemas on October 11. A trailer has been shared across all their pages if you want to go and check it out, and I believe tickets will be going up in August. New Zealand groove metal band Alien Weaponry have a new documentary which will be airing at the New York Tribeca Film Festival in June. Apparently they've been working on this for about 6 years now, And while it aims to follow the band's past, present, and future goals, it's been said to also be a great showcase of the Maori culture. I'm also really looking forward to the Ghost movie, Right Here, Right Now, which is airing in June, as mentioned in the last month's What's New episode. And as I mentioned then, the release for the tickets was supposed to be on the 9th of May, but it went up early across a bunch of locations and different venues. So at the start of the month, I was seeing a lot of people trying to encourage others to go and look at their local listings, just in case. And then once the time hit, lots of people who missed out on their tickets because they were waiting for the release date. I haven't been able to find anything to clarify if there was an embargo breach or if something was miscommunicated, but either way, it does kind of suck for anyone who was waiting for the release date that was advertised. As always, AI continues to make headlines, with the biggest this month being that the Metal Archives, Encyclopedia Metallum, has announced that it would be banning AI-generated music from its listings, and it already started removing any existing entries that fit the bill. They stated that there had been a noticeable uptick in the number of bands being submitted to the page that were AI-generated or that had AI-generated music, and they felt it was time to make their position on the matter clear. There's obviously a bit of a difference in music that involves things like programming, but it has to be in some way played, programmed and composed by a human being. And of course, they felt that AI-generated music does not satisfy that requirement. They will now require that if there is any suspicion of a submission being AI-generated, they'll be requiring evidence to prove otherwise. This might include things like some behind-the-scenes footage, it could be statements from the band or the label, live performances, etc., things like that. They admitted that the policy isn't perfect and it will be a work in progress, but it really had just hit a point that they needed to get something in place and get things moving. I actually went back in out of curiosity after this was announced and checked specifically for the band Frostbite Orc Kings, who are an AI band created by Stefan Schmidt of Van Canto and Heavitar, and yes, they have been removed. While I'm not 100% on board for the Frostbite Orc Kings thing, I do think their concept is a little different and more specific than other AI-generated music though. Because Stefan and some other musicians, they actually spent time in the studio creating and playing music to train the AI on. So where others using AI might be pulling from other people's work, theirs was, at least to my understanding, doing so based on their own work. It also had this whole other concept behind it where it fed into what they called the Metalverse, where they see these, NFTs and other AI bands being formed. So again, while not my cup of tea, it's probably some metalhead tech bro's dream. Speaking of AI, firstly, the new Kerry King album cover was starting to get flagged as AI, but actually it isn't. It was made by artist Marcelo Vasco through a technique called photo bashing, which is pulling different images together and manipulating them into a new image. And that type of work tends to appear in a similar way to AI, and it gets flagged by the programs that are designed to find AI. The artist who created the work has actually shared their progress videos, and he's actually done a bunch of the Slayer covers that have that similar look to them. The latest Deicide cover, however, is still up for debate. While Glenn Benton has taken a fuck what anyone else thinks stance, even though he clearly wants everyone talking about it, he claimed the image was a mix of Photoshop and AI, and has since been labeling anyone who's speaking out against the use of AI as crybabies.
Teardrops are falling.
Drummer Steve has stated that a human artist, a Swedish jeweler, was actually paid for the work. And while he beats around the bush a little, saying that he might have used computer software to design it, but he doesn't really know, he did feel that at least they were paying an actual human artist for the work. Which I mean, I guess. Brat has had some lovely news this month, and if you aren't familiar with Brat, they're from the US and they play a wicked mix of grindcore, death metal and power violence, and they dropped their first full-length album in March this year. It's titled Social Grace and it's fucking killer. Liz Selfish and guitarist Brenna Moat got engaged, with Brendan proposing at Yellowstone National Park, so congratulations to the happy couple. In other happy couples, Nita Strauss and Josh Villalta, who got engaged last year, have now married, with the guest list for their wedding of course including the likes of Alice Cooper, and David Draymond of Disturbed, who performed some songs including like some Led Zeppelin stuff, and my go-to favourite karaoke song, Enter Sandman by Metallica. To finish up our news section on a ridiculous note, a black bear was stuck in a tree in Colorado, and of course the parks and wildlife people were called out to try and get it to move on and away from the heavily populated areas. After trying some yelling and creating commotion to scare the bear away very unsuccessfully, the rangers used a drone to annoy it from above. And when this didn't work either, they decided that blasting some music from the drone, specifically Black Sabbath Iron Man, might do the trick. It did not. However, I'm sure that it was entertaining for all the onlookers, including one who apparently said, "If he starts banging his head, we've got a problem." Once most of the people had left and given him some space, the bear did eventually climb down and move on. I mean, who'd have thought it? But I guess they were really trying to scare him and deter him from going back to where people were hanging out. But who knows? Maybe now he'll have a taste for it and he'll be hanging around the local record store or, finding a local metal gig. What have I been up to? What has been giving Serotonin some serotonin? Well, I've been travelling all over the country for work, which has kept me pretty busy between other projects. Like the creation of a 3D mixed medium art piece that I made for a local art exhibition and competition for the Save Western Port Woodlands program. I have no idea yet whether it's been accepted or not, but I really enjoyed the process of making it. It's inspired by my favourite tree, which sits in the local forest, and it just has the most beautiful and most interesting curves, all these little carvings made by bugs, and this ever-changing formation of moss. I just adore it. I had some visitors come out to see me on the Bass Coast, because Steve, Brett and Lee of Eon's Abyss and the Metal Podcast, and Onji of Spawn, came out to join me in filming for a bit of a mini-series I plan to start uploading to YouTube towards the end of June. It's a little bit of a fun and maybe a bit silly of a concept, looking at songs that sound like other songs. So whether that's the whole song, just some riffs, some patterns or vocals, we're exploring the similarities and seeing if the musos agree or if they think I'm mad. There'll be short episodes with at least one released each month ongoing until I run out of what we recorded. And they'll be exclusive to YouTube, so for anyone listening to the audio version of this on Spotify, you will have to jump across to YouTube and look at this ugly mug if you're keen to check those ones out. It was really fun hanging with everyone for the day. I mean, we even took the time to go for a wander down the beach. And Steve was really generous. He gifted me a CD and some vinyl, as well as some stickers to add to my Eon's Abyss merch collection. I've joked recently that I talk way too much about Eon's Abyss and that I'm going to come across like Mel from Flight of the Conchords.
Fan base of the band. What do you mean, Mel?
It's not a fan base, it's just a woman.
And this little collab isn't going to help that image because the poor guys are going to be tagged every damn time a new episode of this mini-series goes up. But in all seriousness, not only do I think that what they're doing musically and with their own podcast is great, but I really appreciate the support and the encouragement that I've received. And they're all just lovely people. So getting them and Onji on board for this one was really fucking cool. I've got a couple of other ideas in the works for the channel outside of just trying to get the main or themed episodes going again, and I'm really hoping to have some involvement with other Aussie musicians and people within the metal scene for those as well. One of the projects I'm trying to get moving will bring in another nerdy interest of mine, being linked to Dungeons and Dragons, so watch this space if that interests you. I also got some dumb merch this month, which is my favourite type of merch. One of these was a Morbid Angel Covenant Ouija or Spirit board that I ordered like months ago, but it finally arrived and it's really cool. And Pizza Death did a limited run of a Dungeons and Dragons edition of their album, Reign of the Antichrist. It came with a CD version of the album, some stickers, some paper pizza dice, character sheets with Dougie's face in the corner, an Antichrist 3D printed figurine, as well as a Steam code for their video game. I was really hoping that the character sheets would actually include some dumb character stats, where Dougie was like a cleric or something, as well as some big bad evil guy stats for the Antichrist, but that's just because I love shit like that. In terms of gigs, I had one gig for the month, which was the sold out show at Max Watts in Melbourne for Windrose, who were supported by Ramahoy, and fuck, it was a fun one. I don't think I've ever seen a line so long at that venue, but at least it was an entertaining wait, with a group of people in dwarf costumes just ahead of me giving their best Scottish accents and being asked for photos every 2 minutes. Thankfully, despite the long wait, I made it inside in time for Ramahoy. They're just fuckloads of fun with their party pirate metal. These guys are always a good time, and despite the very minor response when they asked who'd seen them before, everyone was eating them up and throwing their hook finger in the air by the end of their set. At one stage, everyone was of course asking them to do a shoey, and anyone who's been following along knows how much the idea of a shoey makes me gag. But Captain Yarface obliged, at least declining the shoes being passed up by the crowd, and opted for his bandmate's shoes because, he was wearing Ugg boots. Someone in the audience, though, passed down their prosthetic arm. I just don't think that the guys were able to see past their balaclava ski mask thingies, so it just kind of got held up awkwardly until it was eventually handed back. Windrose came out strong and sounded fantastic. With a great balance of songs and so many fucking inflatable axes and picks being waved everywhere. It was their final show of their tour, and I think they said that they'd been touring for about 50-something days. It started out in North America, and that the Melbourne show was the biggest of the Australian shows. They finished up the set with Diggy Diggy Hole, eventually going into the dance version, and the prosthetic arm made its way back up to the stage, where Francesco took a big old drink from it, which just felt like a really stupid and fun way to finish the tour. Now let's talk recent metal releases. Obviously I can't sit here and list them all because there are hundreds of releases each month, but I do my best to go through all of the ones I can find, and I'll give you the ones that stood out to me. As always, any clips I share here are included in the Sin and Steel New Releases playlist, available in the Songs from the Episodes section of my YouTube page. To kick us off, we'll go with some releases that sit in the traditional space. We had Riot V from the US release the album Mean Streets, and while it's nothing groundbreaking, it is some high energy heavy metal with some speed and power thrown in. It has a bit of cheese, plenty of catchiness, and is a lot of fun. Sebastian Bach gave us the album Child Within the Man, and I really enjoyed this one. The artwork copped a fair bit of shit online when it was originally shared out, and while I'll admit it gave me a little bit of a giggle too, it was mostly because it was revealed in sections, and some of the sections seemed a little odd on their own. I think it's also because it's the type of work we usually see on a wall. It's mural art rather than what we would normally see on an album cover, so it might have just felt a little strange at first glance. But I think it really works well for this, and it's also actual human-made artwork. The album itself is just straight up heavy metal with the occasional more hard rock vibe and a little bit of groove, and Sebastian's voice sounds fantastic. It all really captures his love for the music and that childlike excitement he carries when you hear him talk about heavy metal. Like, for anyone who saw him in the Dio doco, he talks about the first time he heard the song Bible Black, and it's like he's a teenager again. And that sort of enthusiasm is so infectious and something I just love to see, and we can hear it in the music. Hexstar from Italy dropped the album Doomsayer, which is their first full-length release, and I heard this one initially through the New Wave of Traditional Heavy Metal YouTube channel. And like, they share everything on there, which means it can be really hit or miss on whether you're getting something good. And one of the things I've noticed often lets the bands on there down is their vocals. And in this case, while there is the occasional slip in the vocals that weren't amazing, it was mostly solid. And it's a good album with some really uplifting moments. It kind of builds throughout the album and gets better with each track. And while this next one is not new, we finally got the release of the Tony Martin era Black Sabbath. So Tony Martin was the vocalist for Black Sabbath between 87 and 91, and again from 93 to 97.
And the power of darkness is holds. They compass the face at a wide soul with an angel that fell from the sky.
And in his time with the band, they released the albums The Eternal Idol, Headless Cross, Tear, Cross Purposes, and Forbidden. And not only have they not been up on streaming services before now, except for The Eternal Idol, they've also been largely unavailable on other formats due to issues with or decisions made by previous distributors. So they've been remastered and re-released with a fancy box set, and also finally uploaded to streaming services. So if you haven't listened to those before, go and check them out, and maybe nab yourself some of the physical releases because they are fucking awesome. We've had some killer stuff come out in death metal this month, including a debut from a homegrown Aussie band, Mortuary Sickness. This is hard-hitting, brutal death metal. And it's also been featured on the Sinners of Oz this month as a listening quest. Links to the Sinners of Oz group are on my social media bios if you want to get involved in those communities and be given a different Aussie metal band to listen to each fortnight. Pathology from the US gave us their 12th full-length album with Unholy Descent, and it's kind of a cleaner version of some brutal death metal. Like, there's slam elements in there, but it's all tidied up and a little less feral. But there's still really super guttural vocals and stuff like that. Morgue Meat, also from the US, gave us more brutal death metal with their second album, Apocalyptic Visions. This still has all the elements of brutal death metal, but it also has a bunch of these slower paced, doomy sections that just work really well. Raised by Owls from the UK dropped the album Volume 3, The Satirical Verses, and this just brings me so much joy. These guys play a bit of death metal grindcore with a huge comedy focus, but great musicianship to back them up. The album has tracks like I'm Sorry I Wore a Dying Fetus t-shirt to your baby's gender reveal party.
Forgive me, for I know not what I've done. If I hadn't realized I wouldn't have come. Trust me, this was an honest mistake. I'm awfully sad to have spoiled that charade. On the bright side, it could have been so much worse. It could have been my different from the crap and bad.
Live, Laugh, Lars, and Dance Like Barney Greenway. It's just got so much there to love. And the track Robert Zombie opens and closes with samples from Shaun of the Dead, so I mean that gets bonus points from me. And while I enjoyed this on the first playthrough, it's grown on me with every listen. I'm honestly finding myself with their songs stuck in my head for hours on end, laughing when I'm fighting the urge to spit out their lyrics at ridiculous moments, and then I have to go and listen to it all over again to stop it from looping endlessly in my head. It's just so fucking good. The Last of Lucy from the US gave us their third album, Godform, and I don't have a lot of words for you on this one. It's progressive tech death. It's tight as fuck. It's just one of those albums that like tickle the part of my brain that turns it off so I can't form a comprehensive sentence. So you're not really getting any other descriptions there except for maybe saxophone. Just go listen to the bloody thing. And the last death metal offering for you this month, coming out of Canada, is Calamity by From Dying Suns. This band is made up of some stellar musicians known for work in a range of other bands, including Antoine Barrel of Augury, Contemplator, Oblivion and more, Mathieu Roylorty of Artenam and Nearly Dead Creatures, Maxim Rochefort, and Christian Picard of Contemplator, and Mathieu Dhani of Epiphany, Killatorius, and who's currently doing live shows with First Fragment. This album is an absolute ripper. And I actually had the absolute pleasure of chatting with Antoine, Mathieu and Matt Dhani of From Dying Suns about this release this month. So before we continue with some other releases, here's the footage from that one. Joining us for this episode are From Dying Suns, who are a progressive death metal band from Quebec in Canada. Is that correct? Which is what I wasn't exactly thinking of in terms of language and everything else, because you guys are kind of French Canadian, is that right?
Indeed.
Yep. Now, they've just dropped their absolutely killer first album, Calamity, and so we've got Antoine and Mathieu here to talk us through it. So thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Before we do jump into the new stuff, pretty much everyone in the band is kind of, you guys have like multiple other bands and projects going on. So how did everybody get together for this project for From Dying Suns, or I guess you guys were originally called Jupiter's Red Eye. So how did that come about?
Maybe I can speak to that, at least for the Jupiter's part, and Antoine maybe introduce the last two members. But yeah, as you mentioned, there was a previous band named Jupiter's Red Eye, so I was playing in that band. We did one album. It's called Set Yourself on Fire, and Antoine actually produced that album. And what happened is that we went through multiple member changes in that band, and our main composer and guitarist, the other guitarist, was named Louis. He just left the band to go study in America, so then we had to replace him as well. So well, Maxim from Dying Suns replaced Louis. Antoine at some point joined as a drummer for that band, and what happened is that we were still playing the old song, but there was no like real composer in that band anymore. So I decided to start composing. Antoine decided to start composing, and then the sound of the band kind of changed at that point. So we said, hey, well, maybe it's time for a reset, and let's find a new band name. So yeah, it became From Dying Suns, and from that point, there were still other member changes incoming. So, so Christian and Mathieu weren't in the band at that point. So I don't know if Antoine, you want to take it from there and just.
Yeah, probably, because first, Quebec City is a small town, so we kind of everybody know each other. We all kind of played for one project or one band or whatever. So, and like Matt said, the guy asked me to mix the first EP from Jupiter's Red Eye back in the days, and I just fell in love with the band. I said, hey, if you guys ever need a drummer, please let me know. So I kind of went to see them every month. You sure you don't need a drummer right now? But and then we finally, like Matt said, we had a new lineup which was called From Dying Suns, and we actually released something in 2016. You said it's our first album. Is it an album or an EP? It's words, you know. But I think it just worked well. I mean, Matt is the first guy that I've been able to write music with. I mean, I've always been writing music on my own, but it seems to work so well with Matt. I mean, he started a song, I finish it, and I started a song, he finished it. and our style seems to be very complementary, and it's we kind of see music the same way, and we never
Yeah.
been into a fight like I need this riff or stuff like this. It's always been very natural. So then we in the process to making the second album, because I don't want to say that, but we've been working in that for 8 years.
Yep.
So and in the process we lost kind of some members, and some new key members showed up like Christian and Mathieu, Dhani, which is the singer and the bass player, and these guys were so important on the sound that we have right now. I mean, the bass is, when he showed up with his bass track, when Christian presented us his bass track, the album came up for 200% better. Same for the vocals
Yep.
and all the storyline and everything. So I think we have for me, it's a dream team. So
That's awesome.
lot of word to explain where we're from, so, but I think this is it.
No, I think that's really good. And it makes sense, I guess, like you said, if it's a smaller town, then if you're looking for some good musicians and you want the best musicians, you're going to be pulling from those who are already working on other stuff, right?
Of course. And I
But-
was working with other bands, but I was still looking for them. So
Yep.
that's kind of my situation.
Looks like we've just been joined by the other Mathieu.
Oh, we're going to have fun.
Good timing.
Wait for it.
Sorry,
That's
everything
okay.
was wrong today.
It happens.
Yeah.
We've already kind of jumped into things, and we were just talking about the kind of original formation of the band. So my next question was going to be, yeah, being that you all kind of have all those other projects on the go, how do you balance everything? Because there's quite a few other active bands, like you guys still have bands that are active. How do you balance it all?
Most of the time it's just we try to make it work on the timeline.
Yeah.
I have Clitoris, and I do shows with First Fragment, but for some magical reason, nothing happens at the same time. So it just the timeline just works, you know.
Good.
Yeah,
That's good.
sometimes you just have to compromise, I guess.
But for some reason, I feel that From Dying Sun, it's all our main band. I mean, we
Yeah.
all have our different project, but for example, when I'm playing with Augury, we kind of rehearse 2 times and then we're good to go.
Yep.
This time we rehearse every week, so I feel that this is our main project, and we have other acts, I guess. So,
Yeah, that's the difference also with like having a band with like so much proximity. Like everybody lives pretty close to each other, so seeing each other every week gives it that much more value, you know?
Yep. That'd make it
Seeing
a
your
lot
boys
easier.
every week just makes you want to go again and do it again next week, you know?
of course, and we even dine together, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Keep that bond strong.
Of course.
You gotta. It's
And I think it shows when you see us on stage. It shows that we're having a good time because we're a bunch of good friends that just want to hang out first.
Yeah.
So
Yep. So, obviously, as From Dying Suns, there was the EP release in 2016, which you mentioned before, but Calamity is kind of that full-length release, if we were to differentiate. But it's that first full-length release, and since some of the lineup changes, it's incredible. Like, really, it's that music is
Thank
it's
you.
heavy, it's engaging. The lyrics like seem very fantasy and kind of story-based, and like I really love that kind of PlayStation Castlevania type cover art. So I'd love to know more about, I guess, the artwork, how that came about, and how that links into the music as well.
who should reply this?
Well, so for the artwork, like, so when the guys hit me up the first time when I was on tour with another band, and they just gave me their music and like do something, do something with it, and I was like, my first inspiration was just straight up Black Dahlia, Castlevania, and I started going from there. Started writing lyrics. And as I was going, I was just looking, like my background on my computer is the Castlevania Dracula X map. So
Yeah.
I was just looking at it while I was writing lyrics, and I figured that maybe I should do every song as a level.
Yep.
And as I was progressing in that idea, I just figured, let's just go all in video games. I'm gonna let's find somebody to do like pixel art. Like
Yep.
not a lot of people have pixel art artworks for death metal bands, you know. So
Little bit
yeah,
niche.
we wanted to do something original, and yeah, that's pretty much how it happened.
No, it works really well. So I guess, yeah, were there any sort of particular parts of the writing or recording process that you guys found most enjoyable or most challenging as well?
Do you guys?
I mean, it's been a long process because we kind of had to redo stuff. We've been
Yeah.
recording bass, I guess, 3 times for the whole album, so that was the tricky part. So, can you please get it done? So everything was enjoyable because we're still a bunch of good friends that hang out together even in the recording process. So, but everything was pretty kind of easy because everybody is super professional. I mean, in the 5 member of the band, there's 3 of us who are working on digital in music in our lives, I guess.
Yep.
So we're kind of getting professional in that kind of stuff, if I can use the word. But
Yep.
so yeah.
And you were saying before, Antoine, that you create video game music. Did that have any influence on what you did for this album? I mean, it's even got like that kind of interlude in the middle that's very video gamey. Yeah.
I mean, that's a funny circumstance because I mean everybody influenced each other, but at first, before Dhani showed up, I mean I was already recording music for a video game, and funny enough, I'm not a gamer, so I'm kind of
Okay.
I don't know what I'm doing there, but
Yeah.
but is there a direct connection? I don't know. I guess. But that was not my first intent because when Dhani showed up with his concept, the music was already written. Everything was written. So it
happy
just
coincidence.
landed well with the concept because I love progressive music.
Yep.
And for some reason, progressive music seems to work well with video games because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
different kind of dynamics and everything.
Yep.
So
Especially that
Just a-
really bass heavy stuff.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah, I got into prog music because of video games, so
Yep.
I mean, it just works.
What do you think of, like, obviously, being an Aussie, a big one is the Doom soundtrack, Mick Gordon.
It's too. I don't like things that try to be too metal.
Okay.
I don't know if you get what I mean. Like metal is metal, it's one thing.
Yeah.
But like the soundtrack is actually good. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's just I like that it has its own identity as a video game soundtrack, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of trying too much to be metal.
Yeah. Look, I think for that one, it's probably fair because that's kind of the point. Because Doom,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it took all its original inspirations from heavy
Exactly.
metal.
Yes.
But yeah, I totally get your point. Yeah, you
Like,
gotta
I'd rather
balance it.
have the Doom 1 soundtrack that's like Guitar Pro, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a classic. It's a classic. So you guys also did an album launch last week. How'd that all go?
It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was a very, very good show. We weren't expecting it to be that much of a thing, but everything went super well, and the bands that played with us were amazing, and yeah, it was a great night.
Awesome. And
People
where do you go
showed
from
up
here?
actually.
Yeah, people showed up. That freaks me out.
I mean, I guess that would be the scary thing. You never know exactly how it's all going to happen
Yeah.
and what's going to go down. But yeah,
It's
so
pretty hard to predict.
where do you go from here? Have you got plans for like touring of the album or anything like that?
I speak for the band, but I mean, I don't think that we're looking to be a touring band.
Yep.
I think that like if we have offers, like, let's try it out. But I don't think this is the main concern of the band. What we want to do is like
Yeah.
we want to play shows for sure. We want to create music and we want to have fun, have a good time.
Yep. So will
Yeah.
it be another 8 years before the next release, or
No,
have
no.
have you got some stuff in the works now? You got the right
Yeah.
team on
Of
board.
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Matt has some riffs happening.
Awesome.
We got. I have concepts.
Yep.
We have something cooking.
Fantastic. No, I'll be looking forward to more for sure. Look, that's probably the main questions I had for today. It's a nice simple one, being that it's a kind of new releases episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, was there anything else that you guys would like to add in or talk about or promote before we kind of finish up?
I mean, if you haven't listened to Calamity, go listen to it and tell us it sucks. No, I mean, it's already been crazy, the response that we had for this album.
Yeah.
We're blessed to be able to do this, and we're gonna we're gonna do more. That's it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's kind of weird because we kind of stuck for all that material only for us for 8 years. So
Yeah.
that's the first time that we kind of unleashed that thing. And that's great because people seems to like it. And I mean, that you never know what to expect. So it went so well with the release show. So yeah, if we can get some cool gigs and some, I mean, for some reason, if the Planet lineup's pretty good and we can get ourselves on a tour, fine.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
we're not gonna sell our soul to the devil to get a record deal and stuff like that. So
Yep. I wonder if the 8-year gap and hanging on to it will have worked in your favor at all. Because I think there's been a bit of an uptake of some of the progressive death stuff.
Yeah, I see that too. Mostly like, so even for me, I started listening to the bands that I used to listen to like 8 years ago, you know?
Yep.
Like I've been listening to a lot of Unearth, listening to a lot of, you know, even like Whitechapel, the old Whitechapel stuff. I just got back into it. So I think it is a cyclical thing that people
Yeah.
just start looking for that sound again or something. I do think the time was right to like release this and
Yep.
to like show the world what we can do.
Fuck yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I love that. So for those tuning in, as always, when I share the episode out on social media, From Dying Suns will be tagged in the posts so that you can jump right across to their page. And of course, go give them a follow, go have a listen to Calamity, and of course, go back and listen to the EP as well, because why not? We love binging stuff.
There's
And,
great riffs in there.
But yeah, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join me. I know it's really hard scheduling stuff from the opposite sides of the world, but
Yeah, it's
I
all right.
really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you so
thank
much.
you very
Sarah.
much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
in thrash metal, we had, of course, Kerry King of Slayer release his solo album, From Hell I Rise. And this project has come up a few times, being in the headlines quite a bit throughout its promotion period. For this one, he was joined by some great musicians, including Paul Bostoff on drums, Phil Demmel on guitar, and Mark Osagueda on vocals. And while, if I am honest, I was mostly curious to listen to it because of the other musicians involved, I still wasn't really expecting too much. Like, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy some Slayer, but Kerry King has a particular style that just isn't always super appealing, at least to me, and he can be such a fucking grump sometimes that it can be really off-putting. I think that's why it's so easy for people to hate on him. But I was delightfully surprised. It's kind of like if Slayer were a little more refined, but with Death Angel vocals, which, I mean, that's Mark. But really, these guys are tight. They're playing a bunch of Slayer type stuff, but just done really well. Bat, a side project of Ryan Waste and Nick Paulus of Municipal Waste, and Chris Charge of Ultimate Disaster released the album Under the Crooked Claw, and it's heavy speed metal. I was quite surprised to see a bunch of negative reviews on this, as well as people commenting all over Bat's social media posts, pronouncing the album as mid, average, and whatever else. Like, I mean, it's not groundbreaking, but I think it delivers exactly what I would expect and want from them. It's got a slightly rougher sounding recording with some fun speed metal, some horror themes, like, what's not to love? Insanity Alert from Austria dropped the EP Machinium Thrashedy, and I'm not gonna lie and pretend this is some musical masterpiece, but I had to include it here because it is stupid fun. It's crossover party thrash, and they pay tribute to some other bands, including, obviously by the title, Queen, with their mosh pit version of Bohemian Rhapsody in the title track. It comes complete with film clip and cover art that throw back to that iconic Queen Wayne's World scene.
So you think I'm a stoner that never complies? So you think that I'm worthless and hope I will die? Oh, rabies, I hope that you get rabies.
And the track Welcome to the Mosh Pit, an alternate to Guns N' Roses' Welcome to the Jungle. And you bet those two tracks have been added to my Metal on Metal playlist, which, by the way, I have actually now created a YouTube version of. It's just all heavy metal songs about heavy metal, and you'll find it in the music playlist section of my channel. From Ukraine, Arhat released their second full-length album, Secrets of Ancient Gods. It's groovy thrash metal, but there's this heavier death feel to it as well. Which works really well when exploring the topic of ancient gods, mysterious rituals, and the wisdom of ancient civilizations. We had a couple of death thrash releases this month, including Hell On, another from Ukraine, who released the album Shaman. This is the band's 7th full-length release, and they said they had originally planned to have this one out a couple of years ago. But of course, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it meant that everything kind of went on hold. They feel that it's a miracle it's been released at all, but that some of the struggles they've endured throughout the time have been able to be reflected in the work. As well as the death and thrash side of things, it's infused with folk, including some throat singing, Middle Eastern kind of melodies, and a bunch of acoustic instruments that are really well balanced in with the other heavier elements. And Scolopendra from France gave us the EP Citadel of Torment. The band previously split, but frontman Thomas Law has continued writing over the 7 years since their last release, and so this is the first EP with the new lineup. It's a great EP with some really cool, like, industrial backing to it. Speaking of industrial, Darth released their first album since 2010, titled The Deceivers. It's industrial, melodic death and groove metal with some big symphonic sounds, boosting them above and beyond anything we've heard from them before. In folk metal, Feuerschwanz from Germany dropped the album Warriors, and it's actually a 20th anniversary release, including the new track The Unholy Grail, a cover of the Assassin's Creed song Valhalla Calling, and a collection of the band's existing work in English. Now, I really enjoy the original tracks in German, but hearing them in English does bring a new vibe to them and hopefully brings in some new audiences because they are a lot of fun. And Chaska from Peru gave us the EP Rites of June. This is another one that's been released to help promote some previous work, and it's great. It's got lots of flute intertwined with some heavy riffs and this driving drum work. For power metal, Flamekeeper from Italy released their self-titled album, which is the solo project of Marco S., also known for his black metal project Demonancy. It's a little bit strange actually because they've listed black metal as one of the genres under this, but like it's not there. It really just sits in the traditional and power metal space, and it manages to be both somehow a little generic and unique at the same time. Like I think that's because it has a lot of familiar and traditional elements, but there's something in the way that Marco presents it that really makes it stand out.
I am the flame keeper, forever a believer. I'm your soul, I'm your fire. I am the flame keeper.
Another solo project, and one from someone also known for their black metal work, is Tezza F from Italy with their album Key to the Kingdom, which includes some ideas he originally put down demos for in 2006, and now he's expanded on them wonderfully. Valdemar from Spain released the album Sanctuary of Death, which absolutely has the anthemic power metal thing down pat, and they're also one of those bands that just embrace everything heavy metal. And Rhapsody of Fire from Italy dropped the album Challenge the Wind. And everything about this is just big. It's absolutely epic, high energy, fun as fuck, symphonic power metal. Black metal has given us some beauties this month, including Maison Levide from France, who dropped the album Centempiri Gascon. It's their first album release, and it's black metal meets folk metal meets power metal with some neoclassical and medieval elements that all feel really playful. Like, it's black metal but it makes you want to dance. And it even has some power metal build up in some parts that, you can envision crowds chanting along to. Nyrak from Belgium gave us the album Devourer of All. It has a rawness to it, but really pushes into the orchestral and atmospheric side of things in a very intense and ominous way. Valfreya from Canada released their third album, Dawn of Reckoning, which is a concept album exploring the wrath of the goddess Hel. For me, this album starts out really well, but it absolutely picks up the game around midway on the track Equilibrium. The build-up of this song is incredible. It kind of kicks off with some really depressing sounding violin, it increases the momentum, and then jumps into the heaviness of everything else. And while it has a couple of lulls to set the scene, it gains intensity throughout the track, and I think this is evident throughout the rest of the album. It all holds just so much emotion. You can feel the rage in both the music and in Crook's vocal delivery, even in the spoken parts. It's just outstanding work. Suffering Souls from Germany dropped the album An Iconic Taste of Demise, which is a project of Tobias Miko, also known as Lord Esgaroth, who did all the music for this one, except the drums, which have been credited to Mikkel van der Plik. This is very symphonic, very dramatic, and just feels like darkness, but in audio format. If we branch things out into Blackened Death, Lamentari from Denmark released their first album, Ex Umbra in Lucem. It's symphonic Blackened Death with lots of choirs, orchestral elements, but full of blast beats and heavy riffs with a very grand feeling to the production. And to finish us off today, Veil of Nath from the US released their third album, Between the Worlds of Life and Death, which I could have included with the other death metal, being that it's predominantly tech death, but they've leaned hard into the blackened aspects for this one, so it just felt more fitting to include it here. It's dramatic, with an overall sense of urgency throughout the music, even when things slow down for a moment or two, like that intensity remains, and it creates a fantastic build-up. It's precise, it's clean, extreme, it's just fucking beautiful. So, if I were to take from all of May's offerings and select a top 5, it would be at number 5, Raised by Owls, Volume 3, The Satirical Verses. 4, Suffering Souls, An Iconic Taste of Demise. 3, The Last of Lucy, God Form. 2, Vale of Nath, Between the Worlds of Life and Death. And my top pick for the month would be From Dying Suns, Calamity. I'd love to know, what was your favourite release for May? Drop me a comment, shoot me a message through social media, or email me at sinandsteel@outlook.com to let me know. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to and share the podcast, and make sure to follow Sin and Steel on social media. Check out my link tree to access playlists including songs from the episodes, and to be directed to the Sin and Steel Redbubble store for merchandise featuring artwork designed by me. Thanks for tuning in for this episode of What's New in Metal. I'm your host, Serotonin, and sinners, until next time, stay metal.